The gavel slammed once. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was grief. It was disbelief. It was 20 years of breath held in someone else's lungs. The boy in handcuffs couldn't have been more than 19. Skinny, shoulders hunched like he'd never once felt safe. His wrists red from the metal dot, and then, the voice cut through everything. "Wait. Don't hurt him." A woman stood up from the back row. Her coat soaked, her voice cracked. "That scar on his wrist, it matches the boy who pulled me from the river 20 years ago." Everyone turned. Even the judge looked shaken, and the boy. He froze because for the first time in his life, someone recognized him for the one thing he was never credited for: saving a life. It should have been a normal day, but in towns like ours, normal has a way of curling in on itself, like smoke caught in an empty bottle. I was only 7 years old when I drowned, not figuratively, not some metaphor, not a drowning in homework or overwhelmed by chores kind of drowning. No literal, breast stealing, limb locking, cold flood in your throat kind of drowning. We were near the old Sycamore Bridge. Mom said don't go near the water, but I didn't listen. 7-year-olds never do. The bank was slippery. My shoes had no grip. One wrong step, and suddenly the sky was spinning. I remember the feeling. Not of the fall, of being forgotten. The water didn't pull me under, it pulled the world away from me. The noise, the light, the sun, the safety, all gone. Until two hands, small, trembling, brown, skinned, not adult hands, not lifeguard hands, child hands. They gripped me under the armpits and tugged, not with strength, but with a kind of frantic, desperate will. I don't remember the face, but I remember the wrists. One of them had a scar, a long one, jagged and pinkish white. It looked like someone had tried to cut the world out of him and failed. He pulled me from the water. He coughed, I coughed. Then he ran. No name, no R. "You okay?" "Guess gone." And for 20 years. I thought maybe I'd dreamed him. I came to court because I was asked to speak. They said it was just procedure. A social worker had requested a character reference for a boy she believed had potential. Potential. It's a funny word in courtrooms. Means everything. Means nothing. I didn't know who the boy was. Just that he'd been caught trespassing on government property, something about a shed, a stolen coat. Nothing violent, nothing major. Just enough to make him disappear if no one said otherwise. The judge looked tired. The clerk looked bored. The officers looked like they'd already made up their minds, and then they brought him in, and my whole body went still. He looked nothing like the boy I remembered, because the boy I remembered had no stubble, no bags under his eyes, no haunted weight dragging his spine forward. But the moment I saw his wrist, that scar, that unmistakable imperfect scar, like a tree branch etched across his skin, and that's when it hit me, not like a memory, like a THUNDERCLAP. It wasn't the boy who'd saved me, it was the boy I'd forgotten. I stood. I didn't even realize I was standing until someone behind me hissed, "Sit down." But I couldn't, because something in me, something buried for 2 decades, started clawing its way up. The sound of water in my ears, the feel of panic, the breath that wouldn't come, and then the quiet voice that whispered, "Hold on." That voice belonged to him. My voice cracked as I said it again. That scar on his wrist. And that's when he looked at me. Really looked. Eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. And I knew in my bones, this was him. The boy who had saved me and then vanished. But what had happened in the years between? Why was he in handcuffs now? What had this town done to him after it forgot he was a hero? Because I wasn't going to let him be forgotten again. Not this time. Called him Nathaniel, though no one ever said it with kindness. Born without a last name anyone claimed. No father listed, no mother came forward. He was 7 when he showed up at Ridgeview Foster. Just a trash bag full of clothes and a scar already forming on his wrist when the staff whispered about but never asked. Kids in that place didn't have pasts. They had records. And Nathaniel's said temperamental, defensive, possibly traumatized. But what it didn't say, that he woke up every night crying and didn't know why. That he learned to stop asking questions the day a social worker told him, "Maybe your mom had her reasons." That he always looked at rivers with both terror and awe, like something sacred had happened near water. But no one believed him. No one knew about the girl, the drowning, the fear, the breathless silence, because he didn't know her name. Just knew he pulled her out. And then ran. Because foster kids don't wait around. They save and vanish. That's the rule. The day after he saved her, Nathaniel returned to Ridgeview soaked, freezing, and silent. When they asked where he'd been, he said nowhere. When they asked why his sleeves were wet, he said rain. When they saw the scratch on his arm bleeding where it reopened the old scar, they punished him for fighting. No dinner, no lights, no comfort. And that night, the staff noted, still uncommunicative, possibly self-harming, "We'll monitor." No one thought to ask, what if he was trying to help someone? He aged out early, got placed with a foster man who didn't care, and a foster woman who cared too much for money. By 12, He was cleaning up beer bottles and watching his foster dad stumble in with someone who wasn't his wife. By 14, he stopped talking altogether. By 15, he ran. The streets became his parent, the cold his teacher. Every time he passed a river, he stopped, looked. Sometimes he thought he saw, heard that girl in the water. He didn't know if she lived, he just hoped, because in a life where nobody left light on for him, that one moment, tug the pull, the breath returning was the only thing that ever felt, real. He kept the scar covered. Always, people stared when they saw it, thought they knew what it meant. But scars don't tell the story, only the silence between them does, the officer explained. He broke into an old storage cabin near the edge of town, government-owned land. Claimed he was just trying to get warm. Was he armed? I asked. No. Did he steal anything? A wool coat, and some expired canned food. They paused, then added flatly, still a felony. And just like that, the system that forgot him was about to swallow him again. But I couldn't stop thinking, how many nights had he been cold? How many winters? Had he waited for someone to remember? And what had we all missed while he was busy saving someone else? I asked to see him. They hesitated, then relented. He sat behind a glass panel, wrists still cuffed, head low. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? I'd been a child, a face swallowed by water. But I remembered everything now, and I leaned into the microphone and said softly, I never got to thank you. His head tilted. Barely, I was drowning. You were just a kid. You pulled me out. He blinked, once, twice, then I don't remember, he said, but his voice trembled. His fingers gripped his knees too tightly, and I knew he did, because when you save someone, a part of you never stops drowning either. That's why I had to help, not just because he saved me, but because nobody else ever saved him. The courtroom smelled of floor polish and old wood, the kind of smell that tells you no one here ever gets a fresh start. The prosecution barely looked up from their papers. They didn't need to. This wasn't supposed to be a real case, just a formality. A homeless kid trespassing, another box to check, another name to cycle through the system. But then I stood up, and everything changed. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't family. I wasn't even supposed to be there. But the judge recognized me. 20 years ago, my near drowning made the local news, and now here I was older, alive, and standing beside the boy no one had seen since. I didn't bring evidence. I brought memory. And when I spoke, the room held its breath. I was 7, I was drowning, and a boy no older than me pulled me out. The prosecution objected, irrelevant, unverified, speculative, but the judge silenced them. Continue, she said, and I did. I described the cold, the darkness, the water in my lungs. I described the hands that gripped me, the wrist small, trembling, and marked with a jagged scar. I told them I never saw him again, until now. They made me swear it wasn't mistaken identity. So I said this, you don't forget the hand that gave you back your life. I didn't then, I don't now. Then they brought Nathaniel in, still in cuffs, still quiet, and I watched every juror look down when they saw him, because once you've been told someone is broken, it's easier to stop seeing them altogether. But then the judge did something unexpected. She asked Nathaniel to speak. Not for the record, for the truth. Do you remember saving her? She asked. And he hesitated. His eyes flicked up to mine, and something in them cracked. He didn't cry. He didn't grandstand. He just said one sentence, barely above a whisper, I thought she died. That's when I felt it. The whole room shift, because it wasn't just a courtroom anymore, it was a reckoning. A child had saved a stranger, disappeared, been devoured by the system, and we had all let it happen. The prosecution scrambled. They said it was still a crime, that his past, his juvenile record, his vagrancy, his silence proved he was unstable, that letting him go would set precedent. But the judge leaned forward and asked one question. If he hadn't pulled her out, where would she be? And no one answered, because we all knew. I testified again. Not just about the river, but about the years since. How I searched newspapers for stories. How I wondered if I imagined him. How that one moment shaped me. Made me volunteer. Made me study social work. Made me believe strangers could still save us. And then I turned to him and said it aloud, with the whole courtroom watching, you saved me, so let me save you back. The jury took only 20 minutes. They didn't just find him not guilty. They called for his record to be sealed. The judge ordered the charge expunged, and then she removed the cuffs herself. Nathaniel stood still as people passed, free, but unsure what that meant. Like a man who'd spent so long in a storm, he didn't recognize the sun. I walked up to him, and for the first time since the river, he spoke to me without fear in his voice. You really remembered me. I smiled. Every day I looked in a mirror and saw lungs still breathing. He looked down at his scar, then looked back up, then said, no one's ever remembered me before. But I did, and now, so would the world. The folding chairs were scratched and mismatched. The walls still smelled like old crayons and disinfectant. But for the first time in a long time, Nathaniel walked into a room where no one looked at him like a threat, just a volunteer. helping with the food pantry, wiping down tables, passing out canned goods, no handcuffs. No, keep an eye on him. Just work, simple, honest, and safe. He didn't say much that first week, didn't trust easy, didn't laugh, but the woman who ran the center, Miss Dolores, had worked with kids like him for 30 years, and she didn't flinch when he showed her the scar on his wrist. She just said, "You carry the river with you, don't you?" And for the first time, he nodded. He showed up early, stayed late, carried crates for old men with bad backs, sat beside women who cried over eviction notices. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened, and in that quiet, something inside him began to stitch itself back together. We met once a week, always the same booth. He'd order tea, never coffee, said it made his chest race. I'd always bring a notebook, just in case he wanted to say something he couldn't say out loud. Sometimes he did. One day he slid the notebook across the table. I flipped it open. On the page, in awkward block letters, "Why did you come to court that day?" I looked up, met his eyes, and I answered the only way I could, because I couldn't live another day knowing. I stayed silent while the world erased the boy who saved me. He blinked once, looked down, then nodded. He didn't speak of the years in between, not often, not easily, but sometimes. Little things slipped out. The nights he slept behind dumpsters, the times he pretended to be older just to get a job that would pay under the table, the time he got arrested for loitering while waiting outside a job interview. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry, he just said it all with a kind of exhausted grace, as if he wasn't surprised the world had tried to forget him, only surprised someone hadn't. He started reading again, started with children's books, soft, simple stories, then moved on to novels. Biographies. He said he liked memoirs, people who survived things and lived to tell it. And once, quietly, he said, "Maybe someday I'll write mine." I smiled. I'd read every word. It was nothing fancy. One window, one sink that leaked, but it had a bed, a door that locked from the inside, a heater that worked, and a roof that didn't threaten to cave in. He stood in the middle of the room for nearly an hour that first night, not moving, just looking, as if trying to convince himself it was real. He taped a picture of a river to the wall, not the one he'd pulled me from, just a river. Any river. He said it helped him remember that even things that sweep you away sometimes give you back. They asked me to speak about community reintegration. About what it means to give someone a second chance. I walked to the podium. Took a deep breath and said, "Sometimes second chances aren't about fixing mistakes. Sometimes they're about finally seeing someone as they truly are, not broken, not dangerous, just unseen." In the back row, Nathaniel sat quietly, arms folded, eyes steady. And when I finished, he nodded once. That was all, but it meant everything. I found the old file, the one from my near-drowning. It was thin, one page, a single typed sentence, unidentified, child pulled from river, saved by unknown individual. No further details. That was it. No names, no search, no follow, up, just a footnote. But now, that forgotten moment had a name, Nathaniel, and a future. It started with whispers, then questions, then headlines. Local man once homeless, now hero, who saved girl from river town revisits forgotten story of childhood rescue, second chances. The boy with the scar. And just like that, people started looking at Nathaniel differently. Not like he was dangerous, but like he was unexpected. A myth they hadn't realized lived. Down the block, the mayor invited him to the spring fair. Said it would be good for optics. Nathaniel almost didn't go, didn't like crowds, didn't trust them, but Miss Dolores convinced him. Sometimes the people who fear you just need to see you in daylight. So he went. Wore a donated button-down shirt. Still didn't smile much, but he stood tall. The mayor gave a speech. Said big things like redemption and heroism. Then handed Nathaniel a plaque with his name engraved. For a moment, the crowd applauded and Nathaniel stood still, hands at his side, eyes lowered, not proud, just unsure. Like the applause might disappear if he blinked. Afterward, a woman from the crowd approached. Middle-aged, nice coat, said she remembered him from school. Said, "You were always so quiet." Then added, too quickly, "I guess it's true. Then, you really saved her." He nodded once, and she replied, "Well, I never would have guessed it." Then walked away. Later that night, I found him sitting behind the bandstand, by alone, black beside him in the grass. His hands were shaking. "I didn't ask for this," he said. I sat beside him. "You didn't ask to save me either." He looked up. And whispered, "They'll forget again." I didn't answer, because I couldn't promise they wouldn't. Reached for a box of cereal. A man behind him cleared his throat. Nathaniel turned. The man said, "You the one from the news?" Nathaniel hesitated. "Yes." The man stared at his hands. Saw the scar, and then he extended his own hand. "Glad you made it back." It wasn't always that kind. Some said it was staged, that he'd saved me for attention, even though he was a child, even though he disappeared for 20 years. Small towns remember what they want. and forget what doesn't fit the narrative. But Nathaniel didn't argue. He just kept showing up, kept helping, kept existing, and somehow, that was louder than any speech. He brought me a notebook, said it was a rough draft of his memoir. Inside were pencil sketch chapters titled with quiet things, Under the Bridge, The First Night I Was Hungry, Things I Remember but Don't Understand, The Girl in the Water. I flipped through, read a few pages, then closed it gently. It's beautiful, I said. He shook his head. It's real, and I knew what he meant, not polished, not poetic, but true, and that was enough. They invited him to speak, about homelessness, about resilience. He declined. Said he didn't know how to talk about pain out loud, so he offered to read from the notebook instead. The room fell silent as he opened to a page, marked only, The River. His voice was quiet, cracked, but steady. He read about the water, the cold. The girl he thought had died. The panic in his chest. The decision to run. And how that moment haunted. Every night after, when he finished, no one clapped. Not right away. They just stood. One by one. As if honoring something sacred. After that night, things changed. Not fast. Not all at once, but they did. The man who owned the hardware store offered him part-time work. The diner gave him leftover meals at closing. The local college let him sit in on writing workshops, no tuition required. People started remembering. Not just who he was, but who they had failed to see. The sky was amber. Soft wind rustled through trees, the same trees that watched me fall into the water 2 decades ago. The same muddy river that once pulled me under now flowed calmly, as if it had never hurt anyone. But it had. It had swallowed 2 children and returned only one. And now, both of us stood here again. Side by side. Me. Nathaniel. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the water, like it was some ghost he wasn't sure how to forgive. He rolled up his sleeve, slowly. The scar was still there. Paler. Fainter, but still shaped like a question mark. No one ever answered. I never came back here, he said finally. His voice was steadier now, older. Not once. I thought if I did, it'd pull me under too. I looked out over the water. So why now? He didn't answer immediately. Then, because I don't want the last time I stood here to be the day I ran away. There was a long silence, not empty, just full of everything we never got to say. So I broke it. Do you remember what you said to me before you pulled me out? He turned, eyes soft. You were unconscious. I heard you. I said. It was faint, but I heard it. He looked down. I said. Hold on. I nodded. You did, and he did. Not just that day. Every day after. He held on through years of silence, of hunger, of cold, through the cruelty of being forgotten, through the pain of remembering. He held on. I pulled something from my coat, a photo, me, age 7, dripping, wet, sitting on a stretcher. The paramedic who'd taken it said I was lucky, but it was never luck, it was him. I handed it to Nathaniel. He stared at it for a long time, then tucked it into his coat pocket like it was something sacred. He took off his shoes, rolled up his pant legs, stepped into the river. Not far, just enough to feel it, to stand in the same place he'd once crouched. I watched him close his eyes, breathe, then whisper something. I couldn't hear a prayer, or maybe just a goodbye. When he stepped out, his eyes were wet, not from the river, but from the weight finally leaving his chest. I'm not scared of it anymore, he said, and I smiled. Because it gave you back. He looked at me. Double quotes, no, because it gave me you. Nathaniel now teaches a writing class. Not officially. Just Saturday mornings. Kids from the shelter. Teens who live in cars. He tells them, you don't have to be rescued to matter. You just have to keep showing up. He doesn't talk about the river. Not much. But sometimes, when a student feels invisible, he shows them his scar and says, this didn't end me. It marked where I began. His memoir finally released. It's called The Scar You Gave Me Back. It opens with a dedication to the girl who never forgot the boy who was never seen. You gave me my name back. We come back once a year, not to mourn, to honor, to remember. He always brings 2 flowers, one for who he was, one for who he became. And each time we leave, he whispers the same thing. I forgive you. I asked once if he meant the river. He said, no, myself. Some scars don't mean broken, they mean survived, and sometimes, the person who saved you is the one the world tried to forget. But not anymore, not now, not ever again.